Ahead for us over the next 30 minutes, how are daycares dealing with the brand new mask mandate that abruptly came from the state yesterday? We're going to be talking to someone who works with a lot of local providers and also get some advice for parents. Plus some legal questions and answers about how religious exemptions work when it comes to vaccine mandates. And a new tactic in Erie County to try to change the lives of young people before they may get caught up in violence. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. We're going to start with some tough news in the fight against COVID-19 here in Western New York. A couple of numbers that we want to show you. So yesterday in our region, we had 700 new confirmed cases. We haven't seen that many in a single day since April 16th, exactly 5 months ago. And that was before many people were vaccinated. Now, if you look just at Erie County, 400 new confirmed cases yesterday. Again, the most in almost 5 months. And back then we were coming out of the last wave, and it was before Delta really took hold as well. So the trend is not good. And because of the uptick in cases, starting today, all kids age 2 and up, plus all staff and visitors, had to wear masks at all state-regulated child care facilities. Talked about this yesterday, Governor Kathy Hochul making the announcement on the mandate. We're kind of wondering how today went on day one. Let's get straight to our first guest. Kaley Donaldson joins us live right now. She is with the Child Care Resource Network here in Western New York, a nonprofit that helps families. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So to start, this mask mandate seemed to catch a lot of local daycares off guard. It caught a lot of parents off guard, just, hours to prepare for it. What have you heard about how it went today?
It was a struggle. Ideally, when you're working with small children, especially our 2 and 3-year-olds who haven't had to wear masks for extended periods of time over the last couple of years, you would have some sort of ramp up to this kind of thing as opposed to just a one-day start. So it was a little difficult, but providers are making it work.
Yeah, we know the daycares have already had their share of struggles during the pandemic, regardless of how people feel about the mask mandate. And trust me, we've heard from people who think that it's great, people who think that it's not. It is just another thing to have to navigate here. I wonder what support daycares need right now in order to deal with all of this.
The first thing I think everybody could offer providers is a little bit of patience. It's a lot for them to navigate right now, as well as families. They're doing the best that they can. In addition to that, they're also struggling financially. There's a staffing shortage, so they're closing classrooms, and now they're adding on costs of PPE, not only for their employees, but they're going to have to keep some child-sized PPE on hand because we know that our children are going to drop their masks during their day. They're going to get upset and take it off and throw it on the floor. It's just a natural part of having small children with big emotions. So they're incurring some extra costs because of this at this point.
The last time we had a mask mandate in place for daycares for the really young kids, it was repealed within just a few days. There was kind of an outcry all over the state for this requirement for the younger kids. We are kind of in a different world right now, though. When you look at the cases, and we talked about this yesterday, I had the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics on this show. They tracked almost 250,000 new cases among kids just last week alone in the United States. Delta variant has changed things. I wonder how that factors into the conversation right now. And is there any feeling or hope among some that we could see a similar outcome and that this is reversed, or does it seem like this time we are going to have this mask mandate for the younger kids?
What we're talking to providers and parents about right now is that just like with mask mandates in the school, there are going to be people who object to it, and we kind of have to see where it goes. But right now, we have to live with this rule. So we're working to help parents and providers, help acclimate children as quickly as possible so that there's minimal disruption in their care.
Yeah, and as we hear from parents who are concerned or frustrated about this, I'm sure that you've heard from parents as well. There are ways, though, to help smaller kids get used to the masks, right? We talked about this a lot before school went back in session, kind of preparing your kids for it. What is your advice to parents right now who are watching this, who maybe are having a difficult time with their kids?
Yeah, so one thing we know with small children is repetition is good. And setting expectations. So before you leave the house in the morning to take your child to care, talk to them about what the expectation is for them during the day. So before we get out of the car at your child care program, We're going to put on our masks and you're going to wear it until your teacher tells you you can take it off at mealtime or at snack time or if they're out on the playground. And so kind of repeating that and reiterating that is helpful for children so that they know what to expect when they get somewhere. In addition to that, involving masks in play. So providing them with disposable masks that they can put on their dolls or on their teddy bears, that really kind of normalizes this for our small children so that's not such a scary thing. We also have a ton of other suggestions and resources for parents on our Facebook page and on our website at wnychildren.org that can help them ease this transition a little bit.
And Kaley, one of the other things that I've heard from some parents, and this is a little bit anecdotal, but they all say as well that, kids are resilient. And in a lot of cases, we're hearing from parents who maybe feel like this should be their decision as opposed to actual concerns from the kids. What do you think of that argument that kids are pretty resilient and if you work with them that they can get used to these masks and that it can be good for them? We know kids don't typically get as sick or end up in the hospital from COVID, but they certainly can get sick even though it's more rare than with adults.
Yeah, absolutely. So children are remarkably resilient. And by, as adults, we can model appropriate behavior. We can model what we want them to do. And anecdotally as well, we were having the discussion in our office yesterday about how while your child might not be super into wearing their mask at home, or you might struggle to get your child to wear their mask when you're with them, when you take them to their childcare program, when you take them to school, they have a little bit different mindset about it. And it might actually be easier for them to do it there than it is for them to do it for you, which, can be remarkably frustrating for parents. But it is one of those things, children with the appropriate amount of practice and, continuing modeling behaviors and normalizing this for them, it is something that they can get used to.
A lot of great information. We appreciate you coming on. Kaley Donaldson is with the Child Care Resource Network here in Western New York. Thanks for your time and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, we have heard and talked a lot about what wave of COVID-19 we're in at the current moment, as we've seen cases, hospitalizations, and deaths kind of rise and fall multiple times over the past year and a half. Those patterns help public health experts predict where we're headed next. Very important. But now all of a sudden, that is becoming a little bit less reliable. Here's a look tonight at why.
Let's talk waves. No, not those waves, COVID waves. In 2020, every wave of cases resulted in a similar looking wave of hospitalizations and deaths. As cases increased, a week or so later, so would hospitalizations. And as hospitalizations increased, a few weeks later, so unfortunately would deaths. Eventually, the cases would peak, the wave would crest, and hospitals would start to calm. Which brings us to a critical goal of vaccinations. With Delta circulating, we know we're going to see more waves. The key is, will the vaccine ease the hospitalizations and deaths that routinely followed last year? Take the United Kingdom, for example. A few months ago, cases once again started to rise quickly. Another wave was upon them. But this time, in a country with more than 60% of its residents vaccinated, the case wave was not followed by a similar increase in hospitalizations. Look, while cases jumped like this, hospitalizations didn't. The two metrics, in essence, decoupled from each other. That's a good sign the vaccine is working by preventing the most serious of cases. Problem is, that's not what we're seeing in many states in the U.S. Look at Idaho and Tennessee, for example. Two states far apart, both have seen recent record case spikes, which have led to sharp and record-breaking increases in hospitalizations as well. No decoupling in either. There are now more people in Tennessee and Idaho hospitals than at any previous point in the pandemic. Why? It's not entirely clear, although pockets of both states remain highly unvaccinated and thus unprotected from the virus. Why pay attention to this? Because as long as cases and hospitalizations continue to rise in unison, it's going to be tough to put these waves, and thus the pandemic itself, behind us.
So on this issue of waves, we wanted to see how our region is doing compared to the rest of the country. So first, take a look at the U.S. as a whole. So these charts, two of them we've kind of merged together, come from the New York Times, showing new cases in dark gray and then hospitalizations in red. And you can see the waves match. Unfortunately, that's even the case at the far right portion of this. So that's the most recent wave that we're in. So unlike in the United Kingdom that we talked about in the story there, our country's hospital wave matches pretty closely to new cases, sort of not what you want to see. So what about Western New York? Well, we may be seeing a little bit of the decoupling, the good thing we were talking about. So you can see in the previous waves, compared to this most recent one, cases seem to be rising at a sharper rate than hospitalizations. Now, it's not as dramatic as what we're seeing in the UK, but perhaps somewhat optimistic. Again, if you look at the far right part of your screen, new cases are going up at a higher rate than hospitalizations. Sort of what you want to see if people are going to get the virus. You want them to have a mild case and not end up in the hospital. We'll keep following this as we move forward.